The night was cold, and the rain fell steadily over New Chicago. The streets glistened under the glow of neon signs that advertised everything from synthetic food to illegal tech upgrades. Somewhere in the heart of this sprawling city, an alleyway lay hidden beneath the towering skyscrapers. It was dark, damp, and smelled faintly of rusted metal and garbage. This was where Leo chose to meet his buyer. Leo had been packing for nearly 10 minutes now. He wore a worn leather jacket that did little to shield him from the chill, and his boots splashed through puddles as he moved back and forth. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, but they weren't still. They clenched and unclenched nervously, betraying the tension coiled tight inside him. Under one arm, he carried a small crate wrapped in dirty cloth. The bundle shifted slightly every few seconds, accompanied by soft, muffled whimpers. Inside the crate was something valuable, something dangerous. A cub, not just any cub though, this one was special. Genetically engineered, part animal, part alien, it belonged to a lab on the outskirts of the city. 2 days ago, Leo had broken in and stolen it. Now he planned to sell it to the highest bidder. If things went well, he'd walk away with enough credits to clear his debts. If they didn't, well, he didn't want to think about that. A low hum broke the silence of the alleyway. At first, Leo thought it might be another hovercar passing overhead, but then he saw the figure stepping out of the shadows. Carter Hale emerged slowly, flanked by 2 large men who looked like they could crush bones with their bare hands. Carter himself wasn't much taller than average, but there was something about him that made people uneasy. Maybe it was the scars on his knuckles or the way his icy blue eyes seemed to see right through you. "Got what I asked for." Carter's voice was rough, almost guttural. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Leo swallowed hard but nodded. "Yeah, I've got it." He placed the crate carefully on the wet ground between them. The movement caused the cub to whimper again, louder this time. Leo winced, glancing down at the bundle guiltily. Carter crouched down, ignoring the water soaking into the knees of his pants. With deliberate slowness, he peeled back the edge of the cloth covering the crate. Inside, nestled among scraps of fabric meant to keep it warm, was the cub. Its fur shimmered faintly even in the dim light, shifting colors as if alive. Golden eyes blinked up at Carter, wide with fear but also curiosity. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the rain seemed quieter. Finally, Carter stood up, brushing his hands against his thighs. "It's not worth what you're asking," he said flatly. Leo froze. "What do you mean? You agreed to my price." Carter smirked, glancing at his before turning back to Leo. "I lied." Before Leo could respond, the 2 hulking men stepped forward. One grabbed Leo by the shoulder while the other wrenched the crate out of his grip. Leo struggled, shouting, "You can't just take it. That's mine." "Oh, really?" Carter tilted his head, studying Leo with amusement. "And how exactly did you come by it? Did you buy it?" "No, you stole it, which means it doesn't belong to you either." Leo opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat. He knew Carter was right. Still, desperation clawed at him. "If you don't pay me, I'll go to the authorities. I'll tell them everything." That earned him a laugh from Carter. "Go ahead, but remember you're the thief here. Who do you think they'll believe?" Leo's stomach churned. He hadn't considered that. He'd been so focused on getting rid of the cub and clearing his debts that he hadn't thought about the consequences of being caught. Now, trapped between Carter's men and the realization that he had nowhere else to turn, he felt utterly helpless. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a new voice cut through the tension. "I believe this belongs to someone else." Everyone turned toward the source of the interruption. Standing at the entrance of the alley was a woman. She was tall, with short auburn hair plastered to her face by the rain. Her green eyes scanned the scene quickly, taking in the dynamics between Leo, Carter, and the cub. In her hand, she held a plasma pistol pointed directly at Carter. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Carter sneered. "Who are you supposed to be, some kind of hero?" The woman ignored the jab. Instead, she took a step closer, her weapon unwavering. "Let's just say I have a vested interest in making sure that cub doesn't end up in your hands." Leo stared at her, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. Who was she? And why did she care about the cub? Carter's expression darkened. This doesn't concern you. Walk away while you still can. The woman shook her head. Sorry, can't do that. With those words, the fragile standoff erupted into chaos. Carter barked orders to his men, and suddenly everyone was moving. Shots rang out, echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Leo dove behind a stack of crates, clutching his ears as the sound overwhelmed him. Through the din, he could hear Carter yelling, the woman shouting commands, and the occasional yelp from the cub. When the noise finally subsided, Leo peeked out cautiously. What he saw shocked him. The woman stood victorious, her plasma pistol smoking slightly. Carter and his men were gone, vanished into the shadows. The crate containing the cub lay untouched on the ground. She approached Leo, holstering her weapon. Are you okay? He nodded dumbly, unable to form words. Good, she said briskly, because we need to talk. As she helped him to his feet, Leo realized that whatever trouble he'd gotten himself into, it was far from over. The rain continued to pour down, soaking everything it touched. The alleyway was quiet now, save for the occasional drip of water from a rusted pipe overhead. Leo stood shakily, his knees weak and his mind racing. He stared at the woman who had just saved him, or at least that's what it seemed like. Her name was Monroe, though he didn't know that yet. All he knew was that she carried herself with confidence, her green eyes sharp and calculating as they scanned the area. Glanced down at the crate on the ground, then back at Leo. You shouldn't have taken this, she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Leo frowned, still trying to catch his breath. What do you mean? It's not yours. It doesn't belong to you either, shot back. She crouched down beside the crate, carefully unwrapping the cloth covering it. The cub blinked up at her, its golden eyes wide and curious. For a moment she paused, her expression softening slightly. Then she stood again, turning her attention back to Leo. Do you even know what this is? She asked, gesturing toward the cub. Leo hesitated. It's some kind of animal, a hybrid maybe. I don't know, I just needed the money. Sighed, shaking her head. You stole something you don't understand from people who won't hesitate to kill you if they find out. And now, you've handed it over to someone even worse. Leo stiffened. Carter wasn't going to hurt it, he just wanted to buy it. Gave him a look that was equal parts disbelief and frustration. You really think that? Carter Hale isn't the kind of person who collects pets. He works for factions that want to exploit creatures like this, for profit, for power, or worse. If you'd let him walk away with the cub, you'd be signing its death warrant. Leo opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. Deep down, he knew she was right. He hadn't thought about the consequences when he'd stolen the cub. All he'd cared about was clearing his debts and getting out of trouble. Now, standing here under the dim glow of a flickering neon sign, he realized how reckless he'd been. So what happens now? He asked quietly. We take it back, replied without hesitation. Back where? To the Genesis Initiative, she explained. They're the ones funding the research behind creatures like this. They created it not to harm, but to study, to learn. But there are other groups who want to weaponize these hybrids. That's why we need to get it somewhere safe. Leo frowned. Why does this matter so much to you? Why are you risking your life for whatever this thing is? Hesitated, glancing at the cub again. Because I've seen what happens when science falls into the wrong hands. I've seen the destruction it causes, and I'm not going to let that happen again. Her words hung in the air between them, heavy and final. Leo didn't press her further. Instead, he nodded reluctantly. Okay, so what's the plan? Glanced around the alley, her gaze lingering on the shadows where Carter and his men had disappeared. First, we need to move. This place isn't safe anymore. Carter will come back, and next time he'll bring reinforcements. She picked up the crate gently, cradling it against her chest. Follow me. Stay close and try not to draw attention to yourself. With that, she started walking, weaving through the narrow streets of New Chicago. Leo followed closely behind, his heart pounding. Every step felt like a gamble. The city was alive with activity, even in the dead of night. Hovercars zipped overhead, their engines humming softly. Neon lights flashed, casting strange colors across the wet pavement. People hurried past, most of them too focused on their own lives to notice two strangers carrying a mysterious bundle. But Leo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. After several minutes of walking, ducked into another alleyway, this one darker and quieter than the last. She set the crate down carefully, pulling out a small device from her pocket. It looked like a communicator, but instead of a screen, it had a series of blinking lights. She tapped a few buttons, and a faint hum filled the air. "What's that?" Leo asked, leaning closer to get a better look. "A signal jammer," replied. "It'll block any tracking devices Carter might have planted on us, just in case." Leo raised an eyebrow. "You think he'd bug us?" "I think he's smart enough to cover all his bases," said, "and I'm not taking any chances." While worked, Leo found himself staring at the cub. It was smaller than he'd expected, barely bigger than its fur shimmered faintly, shifting colors like oil on water. Despite everything, it was beautiful and innocent. Too innocent to be caught up in something so dangerous. "Does it have a name?" he asked suddenly. Looked up, surprised by the question. "Not really. It's part of a Project Aurora. But to answer your question, no, it doesn't have a name. Not yet." Leo frowned. That seems sad. "It's not a pet," reminded him. "It's a living experiment. Naming it would make it harder for people to treat it objectively." Leo didn't respond. He wasn't sure he agreed with her logic, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned his attention back to the alleyway, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The longer they stayed in one place, the more uneasy he felt. Finally finished with the jammer and tucked it back into her pocket. "All right, let's keep moving. We're not far from her, but we need to stay alert." As they stepped back onto the main street, Leo noticed something, a figure watching them from across the road. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then the figure moved, stepping into the light. It was Carter. Leo hissed, grabbing her arm and nodding toward the man. Froze, her grip tightening on the crate. Sure enough, Carter stood there, flanked by his once again. His cold blue eyes locked onto them, and a slow smile spread across his face. "You didn't think you could run forever, did you?" he called out, his voice carrying easily over the sound of the rain. Cursed under her breath. "Stay behind me," she instructed Leo, pulling a plasma pistol from her belt. Leo obeyed, his pulse racing. He had never been in a fight before, not like this. His whole body trembled as Carter and his men began to approach, their boots splashing through puddles. "This doesn't have to end badly," Carter said smoothly. "Just hand over the cub and we'll call it even." "No deal," replied, raising her weapon. "You're not getting anywhere near it." Carter's smile faded, replaced by a look of pure malice. "Wrong answer." In an instant, chaos erupted. Shots rang out, lighting up the darkened street. Fired back, her movements quick and precise. Leo ducked behind a nearby dumpster, clutching his ears as the noise overwhelmed him. Through the haze of gunfire, he caught glimpses of Carter's men charging forward, their weapons blazing. Shouted something, but her voice was drowned out by the commotion. Leo peeked out cautiously, his eyes darting between her and the attackers. She was holding her own, but it was clear she couldn't keep this up forever. Desperation clawed at him. He had to do something. Spotting a loose piece of metal piping lying nearby, Leo grabbed it and swung it like a bat at the nearest attacker. The man stumbled, caught off guard, giving the opening she needed to disarm him. Together, they managed to drive the rest of Carter's crew back, forcing them to retreat into the shadows. When the dust settled, turned to Leo, breathing heavily. "Nice work," she admitted grudgingly. "But we're not done yet. Carter's not the type to give up easily." Leo nodded, his hands still trembling. "What do we do now?" Glanced down at the cub, which had remained eerily silent throughout the fight. We keep moving, and we hope we can stay one step ahead of him." With that, they pressed onward, disappearing into the labyrinthine streets of New Chicago. The city loomed above them, indifferent to the drama unfolding beneath its towering skyscrapers. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, adding to the sense of urgency. Leo didn't know how much longer they could keep running, but for now, all he could do was follow and hope they made it to safety before Carter found them again. The streets of New Chicago stretched endlessly ahead, a maze of shadows and flickering lights. Led the way, her pace quick but deliberate. The cub, still nestled in its crate, seemed to sense the tension in the air. It remained quiet, its golden eyes occasionally peeking out from beneath the cloth that covered it. Leo followed closely behind, his mind racing with questions he didn't dare ask. Every step they took felt like a gamble, every corner they turned a potential trap. Glanced over her shoulder at him. "Stay sharp," she warned. "We're not safe yet." Leo nodded, though his nerves were already frayed. He had never been in a situation like this before, chased by ruthless men with weapons, carrying a stolen creature whose value he barely understood. His life had always been simple, predictable even. Now, everything felt chaotic, dangerous, and far beyond his control. As they moved deeper into the city, the rain began to ease, leaving the pavement slick and reflective under the glow of neon signs. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the distant hum of hovercars and the occasional shout from a passerby. Kept her plasma pistol close, her grip firm and ready. She scanned the area constantly, her green eyes darting from one shadowy doorway to the next. "Where are we going?" Leo finally asked, his voice low. Tua replied without slowing down. "It's not far, but we need to be careful. Carter could have people watching us." Leo swallowed hard. The thought of being ambushed again made his stomach churn. "Do you think he'll try something else?" "I know he will," said bluntly. "Men like Carter don't give up easily. He wants the cub and he won't stop until he gets it, or until we make sure he can't." Leo frowned. Why does he want it so badly? What's so special about whatever this thing is? Hesitated, glancing down at the crate in her arms. It's part of a larger project, one that's meant to push the boundaries of science. But there are factions out there who see these creatures as weapons. They'd use them to start wars, to gain power, to destroy anyone who stands in their way. Carter works for one of those factions. Leo shook his head, trying to process what she was saying. But why would anyone do that? Why turn something so innocent into a weapon? Sighed, because innocence doesn't matter to people like that. All they care about is profit and power. And if they get their hands on this cub, it'll be the beginning of something terrible. They rounded another corner, entering a quieter part of the city. The buildings here were older, their facades cracked and crumbling. Few people walked these streets, and the ones who did kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact. Slowed her pace slightly, checking her surroundings carefully. "This is it," she said after a moment, nodding toward a nondescript building at the end of the block. Its windows were dark and the door looked rusted and unused. To anyone passing by, it appeared abandoned, but knew better. She approached the entrance cautiously, tapping a sequence on a hidden keypad beside the door. There was a soft click, and the door swung open just wide enough for them to slip inside. Leo followed her into the dimly lit interior, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the darkness. The room was small but functional, filled with basic furniture and supplies. A single light hung from the ceiling, casting a pale glow over the space. Set the crate down gently on a nearby table and turned to face Leo. "We'll stay here for now," she said. "It's secure, but we can't afford to relax. Carter's men might already be searching for us." Leo nodded, his gaze drifting to the cub. It shifted slightly in its crate, letting out a soft whimper. He felt a pang of guilt. What happens if they find us? His expression hardened. "Then we fight, and if we can't win, we make sure the cub doesn't fall into their hands." Leo stared at her, startled by the determination in her voice. You'd really do that? Risk your life for this? Yes, said simply, because some things are worth fighting for, even dying for. Her words lingered in the air, heavy and final. Leo didn't respond. Instead, he sank into a nearby chair, his thoughts swirling. He had started this whole mess because of greed, because he wanted money to pay off his debts. Now, he was caught in the middle of something much bigger than himself, something he didn't fully understand. For a while, neither of them spoke. Herself checking the perimeter of ensuring all the doors and windows were locked. Leah watched her move with quiet efficiency, marveling at how calm she seemed despite the danger they were in. Finally, she returned to the main room and sat across from him. "Tell me," she said, her tone softer now, "why did you steal the cub in the first place?" Leo hesitated, unsure where to begin. "I owed money, a lot of it, to people who wouldn't hesitate to hurt me, or worse, if I didn't pay up. When I heard about the lab, I thought it was my only way out." Studied him for a moment, her green eyes piercing. "And now?" Leo sighed. "Now I realize how stupid I was. I didn't think about the consequences. I just wanted a quick fix." "You're not the first person to make that mistake," admitted. "But you have a chance to make things right. Help me protect the cub and maybe you can start over." Leo looked at her, surprised by the offer. "Why would you trust me, after everything I've done?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance," replied. "And because I need someone I can rely on. If we're going to keep the cub safe, I can't do it alone." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For the first time in days, Leo felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he couldn't undo the mistakes he'd made, but he could try to make amends. He could help and maybe, just maybe, redeem himself in the process. Before either of them could say more, a faint noise outside caught their attention. It was barely audible, a scrape against metal, followed by the sound of footsteps. His hand immediately went to her plasma pistol, and she motioned for Leo to stay quiet. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to hide, moved silently to the door, pressing her back against the wall beside it. Leo held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't armed and he didn't know how to fight. If Carter's men had found them, he was completely useless. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a figure silhouetted against the dim light from outside. Raised her weapon, ready to fire. But then she lowered it, exhaling sharply. "It's okay," she said, stepping back. "It's just Alex." A man entered the room, his face lined with exhaustion. He carried a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and his clothes were damp from the rain. "Sorry I'm late," he said, setting the bag down on the table. "Had to lose a tail." Nodded. "Did you bring it?" Alex opened the bag, revealing an assortment of gadgets and tools. "Everything you asked for, plus a few extras just in case." Rummaged through the contents quickly, pulling out a small device that resembled a scanner. "Good. We'll need this to track any incoming threats." Alex noticed Leo sitting in the corner and raised an eyebrow. "Who's this?" "This is Leo," explained. "He's involved. For now, he's helping us." Alex gave Leo a skeptical look but didn't press further. "All right, what's the plan?" Glanced at the cub, her expression grim. "We fortify our position here, monitor the area and prepare for the worst. Carter won't stop until he gets what he wants, and if he finds us, we need to be ready." Leo listened silently, feeling both grateful and overwhelmed. These people were risking their lives to protect something they believed in, and now, somehow, he was part of it. As the night wore on, the three of them worked together to secure They set up traps, calibrated sensors, and reviewed escape routes. Through it all, the cub remained quiet, its presence a constant reminder of what was at stake. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Leo felt a strange sense of resolve. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't running anymore. There was quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery and the occasional rustle from the cub's crate. Moved with purpose, her every action deliberate as she set up defenses around the small, dimly lit room. Alex worked alongside her, his movements efficient and practiced. Together, they transformed the unassuming space into a fortress of sorts. Hidden traps, motion sensors, and makeshift barriers lined the perimeter. Leo watched them from the corner of the room, feeling both useless and out of place. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. His hands fidgeted nervously in his lap as guilt gnawed at him. He had caused all this trouble. If it weren't for him, the cub would still be safe in the lab, or at least safer than it was now. Instead, he had stolen it, drawn Carter's attention, and put everyone here in danger. The weight of his mistakes pressed down on him like a physical force. Noticed his unease. She paused her work long enough to glance over at him. "You okay?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. Leo hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how I got us into this mess," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "If I hadn't taken the cub, none of this would happen." Sighed, setting down a piece of equipment she'd been adjusting. She walked over to him and crouched down so they were eye level. "Listen, you made a mistake. That doesn't mean you can't fix it. You're here now and you have a chance to make things right. Focus on that." Her words surprised him. He had expected anger or blame, not understanding. "But why are you helping me, after everything I've done?" "Because we need you," replied simply. "And because everyone deserves a second chance. What matters is what you do next." Leo looked away, unsure how to respond. Her faith in him felt undeserved, but it also stirred something deep inside, a flicker of determination. Maybe he couldn't undo the past, but he could try to change the future. For the first time since this nightmare began, he felt a glimmer of hope. Alex interrupted their conversation by clearing his throat. "We should finish setting up," he said, gesturing toward the pile of gadgets still scattered across the table. "Time running out." Nodded and stood, returning to her task. Leo pushed himself to his feet, deciding he couldn't sit idle any longer. "What can I do?" he asked, stepping closer. Alex handed him a small device. "Start testing these sensors. Make sure they're working properly. Instructions are on the side." Leo took the gadget gingerly, studying it closely. It wasn't complicated, just a few buttons and lights, but it felt foreign in his hands. Still, he followed the instructions carefully, moving from one corner of the room to another. Each time the sensor lit up green, a small sense of accomplishment bloomed within him. For once, he was contributing, however minimally. As the hours passed, the trio worked tirelessly, fortifying the against whatever might come their way. Outside, the city remained eerily quiet, almost too quiet. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the streets damp and glistening under the pale morning light. But the calm was deceptive. They all knew it wouldn't last. Finally, everything was in place. Stepped back to survey their handiwork, her expression grim but satisfied. "This'll hold them off for a while at least." Alex checked his wrist communicator, frowning slightly. "I'm picking up movement nearby. Could be nothing, but we should stay alert." Nodded, agreed. "Let's keep the cub in the center of the room where it's safest, and make sure your weapons are ready." Leo swallowed hard. He didn't have a weapon, but he did have the metal pipe he'd used earlier. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He gripped it tightly, trying to steady his nerves. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one stretching longer than the last. The tension in the air was palpable, suffocating. Even the cub seemed to sense it, its soft whimpers growing quieter until they faded altogether. Then, without warning, the silence shattered. A loud crash echoed through the building, followed by the sound of footsteps pounding against the floor above them. Someone, or something, was coming. Immediately sprang into action, motioning for Leo and Alex to take cover. She grabbed her plasma pistol and positioned herself near the door, her body tense and ready. Alex crouched beside the cub, shielding it with his own frame. Leo ducked behind a stack of crates, clutching his makeshift weapon like a lifeline. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Then suddenly the door burst open, splintering wood flying in every direction. Two men stormed into the room, their faces masked and their weapons drawn. Behind them loomed Carter Hale, his cold blue eyes scanning the scene with satisfaction. "Well, well," he sneered. "Looks like we found our little hiding spot." Didn't waste time responding. She fired her plasma pistol, the shot narrowly missing Carter's head. The two masked men returned fire, forcing to dive for cover. Chaos erupted as energy blasts ricocheted off walls and furniture, filling the room with smoke and noise. Leo froze, his heart hammering in his chest. He had never been in a real fight before, and the sheer intensity of it paralyzed him. But then he saw Alex struggling to protect the cub, dodging incoming fire while trying to keep it hidden. Something inside Leo snapped. With a surge of adrenaline, he leapt out from behind the crates, swinging his metal pipe with all his strength. It connected solidly with one of the attacker's knees, sending him sprawling to the ground. The man cried out in pain, dropping his weapon. Carter turned his attention to Leo, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "Brave move," he said, raising his own gun. "Too bad it won't save you." Before he could pull the trigger, tackled him from the side, knocking him off balance. The two tumbled to the floor, grappling for control of Carter's weapon. Sparks flew as the plasma pistol discharged harmlessly into the ceiling. Leo didn't wait to see who would win. He scrambled to pick up the fallen attacker's weapon, aiming it shakily at the remaining masked man. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice trembling. To his surprise, the man hesitated, clearly unsure whether Leo actually knew how to use the weapon. That moment of doubt was all Alex needed. He lunged forward, disarming the man with a swift kick and pinning him to the ground. By then had gained the upper hand on Carter. She twisted his arm behind his back, forcing him to drop his pistol. "Call off your men," she demanded, pressing her knee into his spine. "Now." Carter spat curses but eventually gave the order. Within seconds, the other attackers retreated, disappearing as quickly as they had come. Dragged Carter to his feet, her grip unrelenting. "You picked the wrong fight," she growled, shoving him toward the door. "Get out of here and don't come back." Carter glared at her but didn't resist. He limped out of casting one final hateful glance at the group before vanishing into the shadows. When the dust settled, the room fell silent once more. Leo sank to the floor, his legs giving out beneath him. His hands shook uncontrollably and his breathing came in ragged gasps. He had never felt so drained or so alive. Knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did good," she said quietly. "Better than I expected." Leo managed a weak smile. "Thanks, I think." Alex joined them, checking on the cub to ensure it was unharmed. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll regroup and come back stronger next time." Nodded, agreed. "We need to move to somewhere even Carter won't find us." Leo looked up at her, his exhaustion replaced by a spark of determination. "Wherever that is, I'm coming with you." Studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "All right, let's go." Together, the three of them gathered their supplies and prepared to leave the behind. As they stepped out into the early morning light, the city stretched endlessly before them, vast and unpredictable. Somewhere out there lay safety and danger. But for now, they were together, united by a shared purpose. And for the first time in days, Leo felt like he belonged. The sun had barely risen over New Chicago, casting long shadows across the rain-slicked streets. Led the way, her steps quick and deliberate as she navigated the labyrinthine alleys and backstreets of the city. Alex followed close behind, carrying the crate with the cub tucked safely inside. Leo brought up the rear, his nerves still raw from the fight but his resolve stronger than ever. They couldn't stay in one place for too long, not after Carter's attack. The man was relentless, and it was only a matter of time before he regrouped and came after them again. Their only chance was to keep moving, to stay ahead of him until they could find somewhere truly safe. Glanced over her shoulder at Leo. "You holding up okay?" she asked, her voice low. Leo nodded, though his legs felt like lead. "Yeah, just tired." "We'll rest soon," promised, "but not yet." Alex adjusted the strap of the crate on his shoulder, careful not to jostle the cub too much. "Where are we headed?" he asked. "There's an old subway station a few blocks from here," replied. "It's abandoned, so it should be safe enough for now. We can regroup there and figure out our next move." The trio pressed onward, weaving through the early morning bustle of the city. Hovercars zipped overhead, their engines humming softly. Pedestrians hurried past, most of them too focused on their own lives to notice three strangers carrying a mysterious bundle. Still, kept a sharp eye on their surroundings, scanning for any sign of trouble. As they approached the subway station, the streets grew quieter. The entrance was hidden behind a crumbling wall covered in graffiti, its metal doors rusted and chained shut. Pulled a small device from her pocket and set to work on the chains. Within moments, the door creaked open, revealing a dark staircase leading downward. "Stay close," instructed, pulling out a flashlight. Its beam cut through the gloom as they descended into the depths of the station. The air smelled damp and musty, filled with the faint scent of mildew and decay. The walls were lined with peeling posters advertising products that no longer existed, and the floor was littered with debris, broken glass, twisted metal, and shards of concrete. The faint hum of electricity echoed through the tunnels, remnants of a system that had long since been abandoned. Led them to the main platform, where rows of empty benches stretched into the darkness. She set her flashlight down on one of the benches, its light illuminating a small circle of space. Alex placed the crate carefully on the ground, unwrapping the cloth to check on the cub. "How is it?" asked, kneeling beside him. Alex frowned slightly. "It's breathing fine, but it's restless, probably scared." Leo stepped closer, his guilt resurfacing as he looked at the creature. Its golden eyes blinked up at him, wide and unblinking. For a moment, he felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and comfort it, but he stopped himself. He wasn't sure if it was safe to touch something so otherworldly. "We need to keep moving," said, breaking the silence. "This place will buy us some time, but it's not permanent." Leo sighed. "Do you even know where we're going?" Hesitated, glancing at the cub. "There's a facility outside the city. It's secure, and it's run by people who can protect the cub, but getting there won't be easy." Before anyone could respond, a distant sound echoed through the tunnels, the unmistakable hum of hovercraft engines. Froze, her hand instinctively reaching for her plasma pistol. "They're here." Panic surged through Leo. "How did they find us?" "They must tracked us somehow," Alex muttered, already moving toward the crate. "We need to split up. One of us takes the cub and draws them away while the others find another route." Shook her head. "No, we stick together. If we separate, they'll pick us off one by one." "But they'll catch us if we stay," Alex argued, his voice rising. "And if we split up, they'll get the cub," countered. "We don't have a choice. We stay together." The argument was cut short by the sound of boots clattering against the stairs. Carter and his men were coming. Turned to Leo. "Take the cub and hide. Find somewhere they won't look. Alex and I will hold them off." Leo hesitated, torn between fear and duty. "Are you sure?" "Yes," said firmly. "Go." Without waiting for further protest, she grabbed Alex and darted toward the edge of the platform, taking cover behind a pile of crates. Leo hesitated for only a moment before scooping up the crate and retreating into the shadows. He moved quickly, ducking behind pillars and abandoned machinery as the sound of gunfire erupted behind him. Energy blasts lit up the platform, casting eerie reflections on the walls. Leo's heart pounded in his chest as he searched for a hiding spot. Finally, he spotted a narrow maintenance tunnel just big enough to crawl through. He slipped inside, clutching the crate tightly to his chest. From his vantage point, he could hear the chaos unfolding outside, and Alex fought fiercely, their weapons firing in steady bursts. Carter's men shouted orders, their voices echoing through the cavernous space. Leo clenched his teeth, fighting the urge to rush back and help. He knew was right. They needed someone to protect the cub, no matter what. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as the battle raged on. Eventually, the sounds began to fade, replaced by the heavy footsteps of retreating attackers. Leo waited several more minutes before cautiously emerging from the tunnel. The platform was eerily quiet, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt metal. He called out, his voice trembling, "Alex." There was no response. Fear gripped him as he scanned the area, searching for any sign of them. Then finally he saw movement near the far end of the platform. Staggered into view, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Alex supported her, his face pale but determined. "Are you okay?" Leo asked, rushing toward them. "We're fine," said, though her voice was strained. "They're gone for now." "What happened?" "They tried to flank us," Alex explained. "We managed to drive them off, but they'll be back. We need to move." Nodded, wiping the blood from her face with the back of her hand. "Leo, did you keep the cub safe?" He held up the crate, relief washing over him when he saw the cub's golden eyes blinking up at him. "It's fine. It didn't make a sound." "Good," said, managing a weak smile. "That means you're learning." Despite the gravity of the situation, Leo felt a small swell of pride. He was finally contributing, finally doing something right. The group gathered their supplies and prepared to leave the subway station. As they climbed the stairs back to the surface, the city greeted them with its usual chaos. Hovercars zooming overhead, neon signs flashing brightly, and crowds of people hurrying about their business. To anyone else, it might have seemed normal. But to Leo, the world felt different now. Sharper, more dangerous, but also strangely alive. "Where to now?" Alex asked as they stepped onto the street. Glanced around, her expression grim. "We head for the outskirts. There's a checkpoint a few miles from here. If we can reach it, we'll be closer to the facility." "And if we can't?" Leo asked quietly. Didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. "Then we fight. Whatever it takes, we protect the cub." With that, they set off once more, disappearing into the crowded streets of New Chicago. Behind them, the subway station lay silent and empty, a temporary refuge now left behind. Ahead of them, danger loomed, but so did hope. For the first time, Leo realized that he wasn't just running anymore. He was fighting. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The outskirts of New Chicago stretched before them, a stark contrast to the neon-lit chaos of the city. Here, the buildings were fewer and farther between, their walls cracked and weathered by time. The streets were quieter, lined with abandoned warehouses and rusting vehicles left to decay. It was a place forgotten by most, but for Alex and Leo, it represented a fragile chance at safety. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. The cub, still nestled in its crate, remained eerily silent, as though it understood the gravity of the situation. Led the way, her plasma pistol at the ready, while Alex kept a close eye on their surroundings. Leo followed closely behind, his exhaustion evident but his determination unwavering. "We're close," said after a while, glancing at a small handheld device she carried. "The checkpoint should be just ahead." Leo nodded, though his legs felt like they might give out at any moment. They had been walking for hours, dodging patrols and avoiding main roads. Every step brought them closer to their goal, but also closer to danger. Carter's men could appear at any moment, and they all knew it. As they rounded a corner, the checkpoint came into view. It was a fortified gate guarded by armed personnel in sleek black uniforms. A large sign above it read Genesis Initiative, authorized personnel only. Approached cautiously, raising her hands to show she wasn't a threat. "State your business," one of the guards barked, his weapon trained on her. "We need access to the facility," replied calmly. "We have something important, something you've been looking for." The guard frowned, clearly skeptical. "You'll need clearance for that." reached into her pocket and pulled out a small card, handing it over carefully. The guard studied it for a moment, then nodded to his companion. "Wait here." While they waited, Leo shifted nervously from foot to foot. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His eyes darted toward the surrounding buildings, searching for any sign of movement. But there was nothing, just the wind whistling through the empty streets. After what felt like an eternity, the guard returned, motioning for them to follow. "You're cleared to enter. Someone will meet you inside." Nodded, gesturing for Leo and Alex to stay close. They passed through the gate, stepping into a vast compound surrounded by high walls topped with razor wire. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but orderly. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and surveillance drones hovered silently overhead. A man in a lab coat greeted them near the entrance. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. "I'm Dr. Lane," he said, extending a hand to. "Thank you for bringing this to us." Shook his hand briefly. "We didn't have much choice. Carter Hale is after it. He knows about the project." Dr. Lane's expression darkened. "That complicates things, but we'll deal with him in due time. For now, let's get the cub to a secure location." He led them through a series of corridors until they reached a large room filled with advanced equipment. In the center of the room was a containment unit, a glass enclosure designed to mimic the cub's natural environment. Soft lights illuminated the interior, and a gentle hum suggested life support systems were active. "This is where it belongs," Dr. Lane explained, opening the crate carefully. He lifted the cub out, cradling it gently before placing it inside the containment unit. The creature blinked up at him, its golden eyes wide but calm. Leo watched silently, his guilt returning in full force. This was where the cub should have been all along, in a safe, controlled environment, cared for by people who understood its needs. Instead, it had been dragged through the chaos of the city, endangered because of his greed. Dr. Lane turned to, "You've done well, now tell me everything." Launched into an explanation, detailing their encounter with Carter and the fight at the subway station. Dr. Lane listened intently, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "We'll need to increase security around the facility," he said when she finished. "If Carter knows about Project Aurora, others may too. We can't afford another breach." "What happens next?" Alex asked. "We protect what we've built," Dr. Lane replied firmly, "and we prepare for whatever comes our way." Once the debriefing was over, Dr. Lane dismissed them, promising to ensure the cub's safety. As they stepped back into the corridor, turned to Leo. "You did good," she said simply. Leo shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, I didn't. I caused all of this. If I hadn't stolen the cub, none of it would happen." Placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe, but you also helped save it. That counts for something." Alex chimed in, nodding in agreement. "You stuck with us when things got tough. Not many people would done that." Leo looked at them both, surprised by their words. For so long, he had seen himself as nothing more than a thief, a failure. But now, standing here among people who believed in him despite his mistakes, he began to see himself differently. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "That's up to you," replied. "You can walk away, start fresh somewhere else, or you can stay and help us. The Genesis Initiative could use someone like you, someone willing to learn to make things right." Leo hesitated, weighing his options. Leaving meant freedom, a chance to leave the past behind. Staying meant facing the consequences of his actions, working to earn forgiveness. It wasn't an easy choice, but deep down, he already knew what he wanted. "I'll stay," he said finally, "if you'll have me." Smiled faintly. "We'll find a place for you." Over the next few days, Leo threw himself into learning everything he could about the Genesis Initiative. He shadowed scientists, assisted with maintenance tasks, and even helped monitor the cub's progress. Slowly but surely, he began to feel like he belonged. Meanwhile, Alex worked tirelessly to strengthen the facility's defenses, knowing that Carter wouldn't give up easily. Reports of increased activity near the city limits only confirmed their suspicions. They prepared for the worst, determined to protect not just the cub but everything the initiative stood for. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Leo found himself standing outside the containment unit. The cub was asleep, its shimmering fur glowing softly in the dim light. He felt a strange sense of peace watching it, a quiet pride in knowing he had played a part in keeping it safe. "You okay?" asked, joining him. Leo nodded. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how far we've come," he admitted. "When this started, I thought I'd messed everything up, but now you know you can fix it," finished for him. "Mistakes don't define us, Leo. What matters is what we do after we make them." Leo smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he wouldn't face them alone. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the promise of change. Somewhere in the distance, the city lights flickered, a reminder of the world they had left behind. But here, within the walls of the Genesis Initiative, there was hope, a chance to build something better, something stronger. And for Leo, that was enough.